Hello, welcome to the third installment of PRSA Colorado's Chapter Chat Live. I am extremely honored to be joined today by a previous PRSA Colorado president and our state representative for Colorado House District 25, 𝗚𝗚cie𝗺𝗃. Thank you for joining us, Lisa.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here, Michelle. I've caught these online and I love them. You're doing awesome work. This is exciting.
Well, I'm really excited about the topic we're going to discuss today because I will be the first to put out there, I'm a little bit biased. I am a huge proponent of media literacy. So why don't we just dig in and talk a little bit about it? You are currently known as the local leader in the fight against misinformation. What is it that really got you interested in fighting for this cause?
Well, it's all of you guys. It's all my colleagues in PR. It's my background in communications. When I first came to the legislature, you kind of think, well, what am I good at? What you have your passions and your things that you want to work on, of course. And I have several issues that I work on a lot. But this was an area that really excited me. It's something I've always cared about as a communicator, and being ethical and honest communications, open communications. And I was really worried throughout the last several years. It's been a topic of conversation for lots of people. And so it's really on my mind. And I thought, hey, this is something that I can add that maybe, other members don't have quite the same background that I do, and the passion for communications in this way. And so I latched onto that and have been working on it for my entire 3 years now, almost, at the legislature.
Well, first off, congratulations on your reelection.
Thank you.
That is great. So tell me a little bit about what this bill proposes for people who may not be familiar.
Absolutely. I'm going to go back a little because there's a little background to it. So to understand it fully, when I first became a legislator in 2019, I ran a bill on media literacy. And that bill basically stood up a media literacy advisory committee with members of the community. One of our own, I believe she's still maybe a member, Marilyn Saltzman, has been a longtime PR pro and a big champion of media literacy and good information. And she sat on this committee as a member. I think she did it as a member of the Denver Women's Press Club, but we had people that were affiliated with organizations, professional organizations, experts in their field, librarians, school administrators, just a wide, and of course, journalists. Yep. So we had this committee spent a couple months over the summer with the guidance of a facilitator, researching and meeting and talking about what kind of resources were out there and what really constituted good media literacy education. So they prepared a really in-depth report. So that legislation stood up that committee in 2019. And they prepared this really wonderful report, which is a wealth of information, lives on the Colorado Department of Education website. And then so that was that bill. Then this bill, which we actually introduced last year, but was sidelined due to COVID, as were so many things, rightfully so. But we reintroduced it this year. And this bill is to implement these recommendations into standards for reading, writing, and civics. So we are simply saying that when these standards come due again, no special review or process is required. When these standards are up periodically, the next time they have to implement the recommendations of this report, media literacy, into those subjects.
Well, I will definitely include a link to that research in the notes for this chat.
Great.
Let's talk a little bit about that again. So this bill is primarily to educate
K through 12.
K through 12. Okay, fantastic. So what is the hope that this media literacy education, what are you hoping will be the result of children receiving this kind of learning?
Well, I love that question because I think it's really, really important. Let me just say the end result, I hope, is that we're all eventually someday in the future arguing about problems, solutions to problems, and not arguing about what the problems are, because that's really what informed my passion about this as well. We spend way too much time on information that's not even accurate. And we spent all this time arguing about it. Like if we could all agree that there was climate change, and if we, which, 99% of the world's scientists are behind, but there's a lot of misinformation and deliberate disinformation out there.
Yeah.
So if we were all able to really weed through that and sort through that and make decisions on information and the accuracy, then we could spend our time arguing about how the solutions. Like I expect that that's part of the process. That's part of a healthy process, debate and collaboration and push and pull, that tension. That's what creates really good outcomes, better outcomes, right? But when we can't even agree on the problem, we're just stuck and we can't move forward as a society. So what I hope that kids learn is how to take, like you and I didn't, you're younger than me. I did not have this growing.
Oh, I didn't either. I'm not that young.
Well, right. Like your kids running around with so much information at their fingertips. That wasn't a thing for us. And so, and you can't keep that away from them. There's plenty of ways to access information. And so my hope is that we just give them some tools. And I should say lots of teachers are already doing this in schools. We just want to formalize this and provide the resources they need. And we're saying it's important. By doing this, we're making the statement that this is really important for kids because this is a new resource. We sort of have to keep up with the changing times in implementing this this curriculum or these standards. Like the teachers will develop the curriculum. But we want them to know things like what's fact versus opinion. Whatever news station you might have on in the background, cable news, when they're talking for an hour about a piece of news, and like, hey, we all go there when some terrible thing happens. You turn cable on because you want to know, you want to get all the information in. And when they're sitting there, 5 people talking about one piece of news for 20 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, that's not news anymore. That's their opinion about that news. So we want kids to understand they may agree with that opinion in the long run. Nobody wants to tell anybody how to think. They might agree with the opinion, but they need to know that that's an opinion and not a fact.
Well, opinion journalism was not a thing pre-cable days. Right. So I do think there is some confusion for people when the same anchor who is reporting facts to you is then 10 minutes later going off on a little bit of an opinionated, discussion or just putting some information out there. Right. It does become a little more challenging for people to really leverage what are they saying that is based on fact versus opinion.
And there's so many outlets now. I mean, the proliferation of, all the different platforms people can use to communicate now. And that's great. Like that's our First Amendment rights, like, go out and speak to people, do free speech. But that means that, sometimes I think kids, if they don't have these critical thinking skills and don't really understand the landscape, they might equate what somebody says on Facebook as their opinion with news or a news outlet, right? Or a blogger, let's say. Anybody can be a blogger, anybody. And to be a journalist, you have to be, there's a code of ethics. There's things there's a standards that they have to follow as part of being in that profession.
2 to 3 sources minimum.
Pardon me?
You have to have 2 to 3 sources minimum for each side of the story, because you cannot rely on, and that is why, especially in crisis situations, traditionally, it would take longer to get the story out there. Obviously, it's a little bit different in this day and age with Twitter, but typically you would want to wait until you had 2 or 3 people that would back up what you were trying to report.
Right. And then a credible news outlet has standards like that. They're the ones that set those requirements, right? So you work for a credible news outlet, and they have ethics requirements and fact checking and all of those things. And so we want kids to understand that, so they know where to go for that editorial platform, and they know how to check those things out for an individual outlet. We want them to know we all have confirmation bias, right? Yeah. Like how many times have you seen a headline and go, oh my, you're immediately outraged or whatever. And
yeah, clickbait.
Right. Yeah. And it's sort of the weird model that we have now, right? That's a whole nother conversation about the erosion of journalism, which I'm deeply concerned about.
That I am as well. But I think you were just talking about critical thinking. I think we've had a collective erosion of critical thinking in our culture as well, which is contributing to these challenges. People have gotten pretty lazy with just trusting the content that's been served to them without really realizing you still need to be a critical thinker, which is what media literacy is really all about.
Exactly.
So why should we as professional communicators be concerned about media literacy?
Well, I think that, as a communicator, you understand the power of information. I think that's a really good place to start. Like, I'm an idealist about the power of communications. Like, I think that we can change the world by communicating with authenticity and integrity and transparency. And, so many problems can be avoided with those things. And so, we should all care about media literacy, because that's a way to deliver those things, a way to deliver good information, or a way for people to evaluate the information that way and make decisions accordingly. I mean, and it goes back to like the code of ethics and how we communicate as public relations people and professional communicators, right? I mean, think about the professions that like nobody trusts politicians, media, or public relations people. So
yeah, but that is not, I think most people don't recognize that as public relations practitioners, we do have a professional code of ethics. And speaking of that, I am also going to include a link in the notes of this conversation to the Public Relations Society of America's Professional Code of Ethics. Because if you as a practitioner have not familiarized yourself with that, I mean, you may be following it already, but it doesn't hurt to see that. And it's good information that you can always use to share with clients, or if you're ever in a situation where you are questioning if it truly is ethical or not, this document will definitely guide you as a communicator. So let's go back to talking about the bill. This year, it came back. The great news is that it has won the approval of the Colorado House and has been introduced to Senate. And right now it's sitting with the Education Committee.
Exactly.
So tell us, what can we expect to see in the near future?
Well, hopefully it will pass through the Education Committee without any issues. And then it will do the same process in the Senate as it did in the House. It'll go through debates on seconds, which is in front of the entire body on the floor of the Senate. And then they'll pass it on thirds. And that's my hope. And then once that happens, we'll look for the governor to sign that into law. And then they'll proceed to the Colorado Department of Education. Will have to incorporate it into standards next. And I believe the revisions process has already begun. So that's why we really wanted to make sure this gets through this year, so that can be included in revisions this year.
Great. So I've included the ticker below again, in case anyone wants to read more about the bill. What can we do as communicators to help to encourage the bill and to just help with this issue in general?
Oh, I love that question. Well, first of all, I mean, I think this would help on both sides, is with the bill and just in general. I love it when I see my public relations and communications colleagues tweeting and posting about this. And there has been a lot of media around this issue, which I'm really grateful for, just because part of when you run legislation, I think part of the, and particularly for this bill, part of my goal is to raise awareness, just so that people are talking about it more. So I talk about this a ton. I've got an interview on Colorado Public Radio coming up tomorrow. Like, I know I'm excited to talk about it. I love talking about this. So I think really elevating some of those good articles that are out there, sharing that. There's oh gosh, there's NAMLY, National Association of Media Literacy, I think it is, and Media Literacy Now. There's some great organizations that you can follow and elevate their talking points and their conversations. I think that's really a big part of it, is just raising awareness as individuals, and then being authentic in the way you communicate, which we all know that, right?
Yeah.
But like, I've posted things on Facebook, for example, back when I used to have time for Facebook. I have a more robust Facebook presence. I posted things on Facebook that someone pointed out, oh, hey, this is not true. And then, just go back and correct it. Try to be a responsible communicator yourself and use that as a teaching moment for, because we're all influencers, right, in our own circles.
We are.
So that kind of stuff.
Joe Smith on TikTok does not always have the latest information.
What?
I know. My teen son may not agree, but I keep pointing out that that individual is not a reliable source.
Exactly. And regarding the bill, I mean, if you're super interested in seeing this pass, just reaching out to members of the Senate, that as it goes through the committee, the education committee, reaching out to the education members, all of that's online, ledge.colorado.gov, ledge.gov.colorado.
We'll put all that in the notes. Yeah.
Thank you. I always get it mixed up. And then all the members of the Senate, just encouraging them when it goes to the body for a vote, encouraging them to vote for it and telling them why it's important. This is a bipartisan issue. I mean, it's something that we should all care about. I think we're going to have better outcomes if we have better information. So, yeah.
Well, and as communicators, we all deal with the consequences of misinformation, whether it's directly against your client. It is something that you can't avoid.
Oh yeah. Well, I remember a couple years ago when we first presented the original bill, we got Jim Clark from the Associated Press, is based here in Denver, and he got special permission to testify, which was huge for me. We've had some great, wonderful journalists and wonderful advocates for this this policy, but it was a big deal for the AP. He had to, go up the chain to get permission. And I'll never forget his testimony, because he said, all around the world, our hair is on fire. Like, they don't know what's a deep fake versus what's a real video. Like, they get their things, they have to source information too. So they really were working hard to keep up and make sure that they evaluated information thoughtfully and thoroughly before they perpetuated it, before they shared it and reported on it.
Well, we've had a pretty major example of that happen in our state just recently with the live streaming from the shooting in Boulder. That is a whole other topic that we'll have to get into at another point in time. But the journalist, we're all up against having to really be extremely critical about all of the content we're consuming. Is this accurate? That's, very interesting. Well, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. For all of our listeners, if you are not members of PRSA Colorado, we still want you attending our events. We'd love you to be a member as well. Go to our website at PRSAcolorado.org to learn more about our upcoming programming. We have a lot of great stuff scheduled for the next couple of months, so be sure to go on and check. And thanks again, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, Michelle. Great chatting.
Bye.